Okay, so we're starting with lesson 2.4 today. There really isn't any difference in this lesson than solving regular equations other than there are fractions in our equations. And then lesson 2.5, which we will do next, there will be decimals in our equations. So we're going to solve some of these like we normally do, and then I'm going to show you another option on how to solve problems with fractions by clearing out those fractions. Some of you will get it. Some of you will prefer to do these types of problems by finding common denominators. Either way works. It's just whatever your preference is. So before I even go through the steps, let's go ahead and look at example and practice 1. On these problems, we've solved these before. Can somebody tell me how you might solve example 1? Yes, David.
You have to multiply
on both sides, right? So yeah, this one's pretty simple. We would just have to multiply this side by 4/3 and this side by 4/3. And then to help, sometimes we would just put that 15/1. Okay. Now, what happens when we multiply 3/4 by its reciprocal? It cancels out. It actually becomes a 1x, but we don't need that 1. So this cancels out to become a 1. This cancels out to become a 1, and you're ended up with 1x or just x on this side. Okay. Now, on the right side, left side, whenever you are multiplying fractions, there are 2 ways that you can do this. You can multiply straight across. So 4 times 15, which is 60, 3 times 1, which is 3, and then you simplify this to 20. However, if you're good with reducing fractions, the other way you could do this is cross simplify. Okay. I cannot cross simplify 4 and 1 because there's no common multiple except for 1. But I can cross simplify 3 and 15 by dividing them both by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now, when I multiply, I don't have to simplify this fraction. I multiply straight across. I get 20. 4 times 5 is 20. 1 times 1 is 1. 20/1 is 20. And then this right here would be your final answer. Okay. So this is just a review of something that we've already done. Was there anything I said that was confusing or that you didn't understand that I can maybe read? Yes. Yes. It doesn't matter where your variable is. It could be 20 equals x or x equals 20. Okay, I want you to go ahead and do practice 1 on your own while I do it. And then you can, when you're done, look up here and check your answer. You're done, check your answer. Are there any questions on this one? Anyone still working on it? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Number 2, we still don't need to clear fractions. So we're just going to go ahead and solve these like we normally would. Someone tell me what my first step is in this problem. Jesse. And we're going to add 9. So let's add 9 to both sides. Okay. You should end up with 1/4 x equals 21. And then what are we going to do to both sides now? Yeah, we're going to multiply it by 4 or 4/1, whichever makes it easier for you to make sense of. So then these cancel out and you're left with x equals 21 times 4, which is 48. So still, we can solve these easily without clearing any fractions or finding any common denominators. Oh, no, 84. I mixed them up. Thank you. I like the look on your face. You're like, isn't it 84? Yes, it's 84. Okay. Now I want you to go ahead and solve example 2. I'm going to pause the video and then come back to it after you have a chance to solve. Okay, go ahead and check your answer for example 2. See if that matches mine. If it doesn't, check what I did wrong or what I did wrong. Any questions? Okay, let's go down to example 3. Example 3 is different. I'm going to solve these 2 ways, and you're going to choose which way works best for you. Okay, so for the first one, I'm going to add 2 and 3 on this side. Okay, and then I get 1/2 x plus 1/3 x equals 5. Now, most of us look at equations that have fractions in them and we kind of freak out a little bit and say, I can't do this, it's too hard. So there is a way to make it slightly easier if you are good with finding common denominators and then distributing that denominator out. So what would be our common denominator for 2 and 3? Anyone? 6. So watch what I do. I am going to take 1/2 x and I am going to multiply this by 6. Okay. Then I'm also going to take 1/3 x and I'm going to multiply that one by 6. If I multiply my left side by 6, I must multiply my right side by 6. So what you are doing is you are finding the common denominator, and instead of changing denominators here on 2 and 3, you're just going to multiply every term by that number, every single term. I will tell you, the one thing that most students have a difficult time with or mess up on is that they forget to multiply the other side by that number. But remember, everything you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So if I'm going to multiply the left by 6, I must multiply the right by 6. Now look what happens when I do this. My 6 and 2 cross simplify or reduce. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So now this whole term, 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. Becomes 3x. And now I don't have to worry about that fraction. Before I go on to the next one, are there any questions? Anyone completely confused by what I did? I know that Mrs. Cermak taught you last year how to do this. At least I'm pretty certain she did, but maybe we've forgotten and we have questions. You have a question? Is it confusing? All right, so now I'm going to cross simplify here, 3 and 6. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So now our 1/3 x after multiplying it by 6 becomes 2x. And then our 5 times 6 becomes 30. Okay. So now I've cleared my fractions. And now I'm just going to combine like terms and solve my equation. So I can combine 3x and 2x. I get 5x equals 30. Then I divide both sides by 5. And x equals 6. Yeah. That is perfectly fine. So now are there any questions before I show you the other way? Okay, I'm going to rewrite this equation out. And actually, I'm just gonna leave it right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and solve this a different way. Okay, I have 1/2 x plus 1/3 x equals 5. Now, instead of clearing my fractions, I'm just going to leave my fractions, but find common denominators and add them together. So in this case, we know our common denominator is 6, so I'm going to multiply this by 3 to get 6. And if I do that to the bottom, my denominator, I have to do it to my numerator. And when I do that, I get 3, 6, x. Now I'm going to do this to the other fraction. In order to make this a 6, I multiply it by 2. Whatever I do to the denominator, I do to my numerator. And I end up with 2/6 x equals 5. Now, when I do it this way, I don't change my other one. I'm just making common denominator or common denominators to add my fractions together. So now what I do is I just add straight across. 3 plus 2 is 5, and my denominator stays the same. Okay. And now I'm left with a problem that is similar to the first 4 that we did. I will multiply both sides by 6. Notice we're still multiplying both sides by 6. We're just doing it at the end. And these cancel out. And I'm left with 5x equals 30. And then I divide both sides by 5. And x equals 6. Okay. Now, 2 ways to do the same problem. And I'm just kind of curious which way you all prefer. So how many of you prefer the first way where you're clearing fractions? Where we cleared them this way right here. How many prefer making denominators, common denominators? Wow, okay. All right, so what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to go ahead and solve example 3 using whichever method you prefer, okay? I'm gonna pause the video while everybody works on this. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and solve this by finding common denominators since that's what all of you except for I think Vivi, did you do the other way? Yeah. And then Vivi, if you have a question, I can go over it. All right, so our common denominator is 12. So I have to multiply this fraction, numerator and denominator, by 4, and then this one over here by 3. Okay, so when I do that, I get 8/12 x minus 9/12 x equals -4. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine my like terms right here. And 8 minus 9 is a -1. So -1/12 x equals -4. What am I going to multiply both sides by? -12. We want to get rid of that negative. So I multiply both sides by -12. Okay. This cancels out and becomes a +1 because -12 and -1 give us positive, equals 48. So a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, so you multiply everything by, what did you multiply? A -1x equals to -48. That should be a negative and a negative. Okay, yes. See, this is a negative result, so we multiply it, right? Oh. This is the negative, so negative times negative is equal. But you have a negative here, so this is a -12, -4, positive. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the back. Now, what happens if you have mixed numbers in your problems? Yeah, you have to make them into improper fractions. So let's make these two into improper fractions, then I'm gonna have you solve it. So can somebody in your own words tell me how to turn a mixed number into an improper fraction? Vivi, go ahead. Yeah. 3 times 2 gives me 6. 6 plus 2 gives me 8. So 8/3. So I would write this as z minus 8/3 equals 3. All right, now what I have to do at this point is I have to add 8/3 to both sides. So I'm going to add 8/3. And then over here, I'm going to set it up like this, 8/3. These cancel out. And I'm left with z equals. And now at this point, I would multiply everything by 3. But you guys are finding common denominators. So I'm going to put a 1 under this 3. And my common denominator here would be 3. So I'm going to multiply this by 3 and this by 3. So now I have 9/3 plus 8/3. And z equals 17/3. Please keep them as improper fractions. Did anyone get something different? Okay, while I'm working up here, I want everybody to work on number 4 or practice. That's because you multiplied them instead of adding them. Yeah, because this is subtraction, so you add them. So we had to find common denominators. No, we wrote. So did I do something wrong? No, this is, 8/3. Oh, okay, so what you're doing is you're multiplying. This is the fraction. You need to add. So this is z minus 8/3. You add 8/3 to both sides. Next, did you check against my work to see what you did? So you add 8/3. We're not multiplying. We're adding, so you have to find common denominator. All right, I'm gonna start solving for. So I have to turn my 1 1/2 to an improper fraction. So you should have 3/2 x minus 3 equals 9. This one is going to be a little bit easier. Okay. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And I have 3/2 x equals 12. Now, Saya and Diego, we're going to be multiplying. Okay. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Cross simplify. And then this one equals 8. All right, I want you guys to do practice 5. It's very similar to practice 4. So go ahead and do that one, and then we'll move over to example 5. So everyone should be able to do this one on their own. Okay, so I'm turning this into an improper fraction. Oh, very similar to practice 4. Then I add 5 to both sides. Then I multiply by the reciprocal. Then I cross simplify. And x equals 12. All right. Questions? You want to pull your desk paper so you can All right, you guys, on example 5, I am going to clear my fractions. But I want you to go ahead and solve it the way that you think works best for you. Okay? So I need to turn this to an improper fraction, so I have to multiply 5 times 5. I get 25. Then I add 1 and I get 26. So that would be 26 fifths. So what I'm going to do is rewrite this. Okay? And I'm going to show you why I'm doing clearing the fractions. I just think it's a little bit easier. What is our common denominator here? 10. So I'm going to multiply everything by 10. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross simplify all of my fractions. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. This becomes 8x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. This becomes 5x. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 26 times 2 is, let's see, 1, 2, 4, 52. Now, if I did not do this, okay, well, let me finish this and I'll do it the other way. So now I'm going to combine like terms. 8 plus 5 is 13x. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 13. And I believe, anyone know what 52 divided by 13 is? It's 4. Yep. X equals 4. Did anyone do it differently where you found common denominators? Okay, so was it easier than you think this was? Okay, so let's go ahead and try this one. I'm going to try it by finding common denominators. Oh, somebody said it. Oh, are you ahead? Okay, so let's try this by finding common denominators. Our common denominator is 10. So I multiply by 2 here, by 5 here, and by 2 here. Okay, so I have 8 tenths plus 5 tenths, oh, x, can't forget my x, equals 52 tenths. Okay, so now what I have is I combine my like terms. I have 13 over 10x equals 52 over 10. Oh, this isn't bad, actually. What are we going to do? Multiply by its reciprocal. Yeah. So we're going to multiply by 10 13ths and multiply by 10 13ths. So these cancel out or become a 1. And now I'm going to cross simplify over here. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 13 divided by 13 is 1. 52 divided by 13 is 4. So it equals 4. So I guess this isn't as bad as, you know, I was thinking, but either way works. Okay. All right. Let's go to example 6. There are 2 ways that you can do this. You can multiply by the reciprocal of 2/5 on both sides, then solve. Or you can distribute your 2/5. Has anyone started this? Okay, so I'm going to show you by clearing the fraction how to get rid of it, and then I'll show you without clearing the fraction. So 2/5, I'm going to multiply both sides by 5/2. Now, when you clear the fraction, you're only clearing the fraction portion of the left side. You're not doing anything with the x minus 5 yet. Okay, so these become 1. Or you're just left with x minus 5 on this side. And then over here, you can cross simplify your 2's, they become 1. And then you're just left with 5 over here. Does that make sense? Yes, I'll simplify this one. And then are there any questions about that step? Because you can do it a different way. Okay, once we get to that point, we add 5 to both sides. And we're left with x equals 10. Now, if you had already done this problem and you got x equals 10 doing the way that you did it, then you are doing it correctly. You're just doing it a different way. Different. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve it the way that some of you did by distributing the 2/5. So 2/5 times x minus 5 equals 2. So let's see what it looks like when we do this. We distribute the 2/5 to both terms. And we get 2/5 x minus 10/5. What does 10/5 equal? 2. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2/5 x minus 2 equals 2. Okay. Now I add 2 to both sides. And I end up with 2/5 x equals 4. And now I multiply by the reciprocal. Oh, you guys can't see this. Now I multiply by 5/2. And I can cross simplify my 4 and my 2. And x equals 10. Now, if you notice the amount of work required for this one, the second way versus my first way, there's a lot more work required. But again, if this makes more sense to you, you're going to want to use that way. Okay. All right, you guys think you could do practice 6 on your own if you haven't already? Huh? Okay, anyone not done with practice 6? Do I need to wait for anybody? All right, I'll give you a minute to work on that. So I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal 2/5. Okay, and I'm left with x plus 3 equals, and then I'm going to cross simplify this, 4. And I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. And I get x equals 1. Any questions on 2.4? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop because that concludes 2.4.